This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, so in the last segment, we looked into the way the documentation happens in agile projects. Now let's look into it from the waterfall methodology perspective. Okay, so first and foremost, in agile, we saw that it is like epics, features, and then user stories, right? So here, how does it work? So here, if you look at it, there's a focus heavy on on the documents that are getting created for capturing requirements, and of course, there's a formal approval sign-off process and all involved in the documentation. So the way it starts is there's a document called as business requirement document. Okay, BRD. So this is usually again it varies. In some projects, the client may be really having a very well structured approach. So they themselves come up with a business requirement document saying that this is what we need. These are this is the objective of this particular project, and these are the pain points which we want to address. These are the assumptions, dependencies, scope, etc., etc. So sometimes they would come with a prepared business requirement document. If that's not the case, then what happens is, as a business analyst, it becomes your duty to spend the first couple of workshops to understand the business requirements and all, and first create a business requirement document, get a formal, sign off approval on that, and then switch to the actual functional requirements. Okay, so it all starts with your BRD. And then there's something called as FRD, or it's also called as FRS. It's nothing but functional requirement document or the functional requirement specifications. So here what happens is whatever business requirements have been captured, now you have to drill down. You have to get into the details. If you have to take the same example of the food delivery app, what happens is initially your business requirement document might have mentioned just not even in one page, but at a high level with something the content which fills within one page. It might be there which talks about the business requirement of this mobile app. Now when you drill it down, right, you get the functional requirements like what should be the modules in it and how should it each and every feature work. Similar, like your registration, payment, order confirmation, order selection, etc. So that details, and then splitting it further, all those will be written in the format of functional requirements in this second document. Okay, so these are more or less a must for every waterfall methodology based project. But these would not be enough, and in a lot number of projects based on waterfall methodology, there'll be some or the other complementing documents that will be created in the process. And what is it and all? It depends on the type of project. What really works over there, that will be used. Okay, so it could be use cases in certain projects. The clients may prefer to have use cases. In yet another set of projects, they may say, no, no, use case diagrams is something which is more easy for us to, put a visual representation for the requirements that we have. If you are not aware of it, maybe we can spend some time on understanding how use case is written, how use case diagrams are created, and all those things. Okay. Then there's something called as data flow diagram. Sometimes if the project is heavily dependent on how the information flows from one system to another system, how the input and output of every system impacts the entire project and all. So then there could be a requirement for having a data flow diagram. Sometimes there could be some sort of blueprint created. There are different ways in which documents can be created, which will give a sort of a visual representation of the requirements. So your functional requirement and business requirement documents, it's more like filled with paras and lines and sentences, and it's all word format that you have the documents requirements. Whereas if you want to put it in a simpler way so that it is easier to understand and share the information across, then you might go for these other requirements. And it isn't that these are the only type of requirements. In fact, there are other documents also that can be created, but it need not always be the business analyst who has to create those. For example, in a waterfall methodology, there's a clear cut implementation that should happen of the plan. So they create a project plan document. Then there could be some design documents that are created by the design team. Then there could be a test strategy document which is taken care by the QA team. So during the entire process of project, uh, there's so much focus of documentation that um, a, a considerable amount of time goes off only in the documentation and getting those things signed off and getting due approvals on it and all those things. So that is a sort of a drawback in the waterfall methodology. If you look at the specific details about how these documents work, first point, of course, is comprehensive documentation upfront. What do you mean by upfront? Upfront is nothing but at the initial phase of your project itself. You need to come up with a comprehensive document, which is nothing but your BRD and FRD. Okay, so that becomes a must. Once only when your document has been created, only then you can get the feedback on it, and then it goes through multiple cycles of iterative changes, and only after all of those things have been done you get the sign off. So getting the approval and sign off on your requirements documentation is a major milestone in your waterfall methodology. Okay, so that's the reason there's a lot of focus on getting this documentation done upfront and getting the sign off. Second thing is it involves stakeholders only at the beginning and end of the project. Why so? Because where do you need the stakeholders? You need them to sort out your clarify your queries about the requirements and all, right? So if you have created a comprehensive document and got a sign off, then the chances of you coming up with some new requirements and all to discuss some major things and all will be minimal during the entire project. You will still have occasions wherein you require their help, but it'll not be like you have to sit with them for hours together in a workshop and sort out. It'll be something which could be clarified over a mail or over a call or a brief half an hour discussion over a virtual meeting, something like that. So that's the reason it involves stakeholders only at the beginning. And at the end, why do they come into the picture? Is because they'll be requested to join for the demos and give their feedback as to how we have developed. Is it really matching their expectations, or is there something which still needs to be done, and all those things. Okay, so in between, stakeholders are the involvement of stakeholders is very minimal in waterfall, unlike agile, where agile you require them throughout the project to be available at every phase. The third major point is change request is strictly followed. What it implies is whenever any change is required, it is expected by the stakeholders, or it could be because of external environment, or it could be because decision makers have been changed, so they come up with new requirements, whatever it is. When any change is supposed to be brought about in a requirement, it has to follow a very stringent process of, first discussing that particular change and looking at the efforts and doing an estimation of it, and then seeing, of course, before effort estimation, there'll be a technical feasibility study done. Okay, you want this requirement to be changed, fine, but is it first of all technically feasible? That has to be found out. And after that, there'll be an estimation. Okay, it is feasible. Now let's see how much time it takes. And then the project manager also will be involved to see if it is really impacting the overall timelines. And only after all of these steps have been taken and it has been observed that okay, it is high priority, we need to really deploy it or develop it as soon as possible, then it gets into the plan of development and testing. So this is a very lengthy, tedious, time consuming process whenever any changes are expected. And that is the reason that if you have a project where there is a lot of innovation, all of those things happening and all, or user preferences heavily impact the product and all, then those follow the agile process. Change requests will not be really too much if you're talking about a software that you're developing for a car. Even your car will have some software, right? When you press a button, how the power steering works. When you press a button, how your automatic windows roll out and roll in. Although there is some programming done behind it, right? So that is a software. So every device, in fact, your washing machines, your electronic items, everything has a software embedded in it. Of course, when software is embedded, there's a project behind it. When there's a project, there is a team which has developed it, right? So now what I'm saying is when you talk about a software which has to be written for a pharmaceutical company for a proper testing of their mm, the new drugs that they have launched, then of course the testing process and all will be strictly documented and followed. You need to create a software application which supports that process. Then what happens? It is pretty much written in stone. There will not be any changes coming up. So there is no change request required at all. So you can follow Waterfall over there. Okay, that's how it works. So this is all about the documentation in Waterfall methodology. Uh, we will see if I can. In fact, we can look at some sample documents, or these sections which should be part of your BRD, FRD, and all. We will touch upon that uh, in one of the later videos. And as I mentioned, we'll also see if we can spend some time on the use case diagrams and all. Okay, so that's it for now. We'll close this video. We'll move on to the next one in the next video. Thanks everyone.